Hello, and welcome to the Argyle CIO Leadership Forum. My name is Nick with Argyle, and it's great to have everyone joining us today. A couple of notes before I turn things over to our panel moderator. First, a quick reminder to stop by our sponsors' virtual booths at any time during today's event and for the following week. Our partners are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience. At any time during today's event, you can visit their virtual booths from the main agenda page. To ask questions throughout the session, simply type into the Q&A chat, and we will address your questions at the end of the session. Now, without further delay, I would like to introduce our moderator, Peter Henstock, ML and AI Technical Lead, Pfizer, and Harvard lecturer. We are excited to have Peter and our panelists for a panel discussion titled Headaches and High Priorities, Strategic IT Leadership Trends 2023. Welcome, Peter. Over to you.
Great. Thank you very much, Nick. Well, we have a wonderful panel assembled for you today, and I'd like to get started by having them introduce themselves. I'm going to turn it over to Binu first.
Thanks, Peter. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Binu Verghese. I work as the Vice President of IT Applications and Data for a company called SpartanNash. SpartanNash is a retailer in the Midwest and operates multiple banners like Family Fresh, Family Fair, D&W, and Martin's. We are also a wholesaler in all 50 states and sell to both national and regional retailers. And then globally, we also supply US military commissaries. I'm looking forward to the panel conversation today and interesting questions, comments, and suggestions from the audience as well.
Great. Thanks, Binu. Greg.
Yeah, how's everybody doing today? Really excited to be here. I'm the CIO at Veeco Instruments. We're a heavy equipment manufacturer in the semiconductor industry.
Thanks. Maria.
My name is Maria Dakbu. I'm responsible for field go-to-market and strategy for Adobe Document Cloud. Adobe is well known for a variety of things, but I spend most of my time thinking about knowledge workers and the workflows that they're engaged in. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Great, thank you. And lastly, but certainly not least, David.
Yes, thank you. I'm very excited to be here and be a part of the panel. So I'm David Williamson. I'm the CIO at Abzena. We are a global contract development and manufacturing organization serving the biotech industry. We provide a variety of manufacturing and lab services from cell line development to full-scale manufacturing.
All right, so we have a very diverse panel, as you can tell. Let's just jump right into it. What do you see as being the greatest challenges facing CIOs today? Mario, would you like to get us started on this one?
Sure. So as I said, I spent a lot of time talking to people about the workflows and the infrastructure that they have that underlies that. And the things that CIOs talk to us most about is offloading some of the tech debt that they've acquired during COVID. So we know at the beginning of the pandemic, there was a rush to buy a lot of stuff that would facilitate remote work and help to automate some of those processes. And so people had to buy quickly and perhaps without as much thought as they might have applied to other purchases. And these things, they lasted us through the pandemic. In the post-pandemic period, we had a time where our CIOs are saying that they can go back and reassess some of their purchases. And then also with some economic constriction, people are really looking to optimize the infrastructure that they have. And they also frequently have some slimmed down workforce as well. So they're looking for optimization, both within the tech debt and within to make that their workforce more productive. On the other hand, now we have this workforce that has expectations around all the exciting things that we're going to be talking about today. So they have expectations about being able to use all the cool things that they read about in, regular media, or whether it's on Reddit as well. And even from some of the customer calls that I get to listen in on, we have little groups of people who are like, oh no, I'm doing all this stuff in ChatGPT, I'm doing all this stuff over here. So the CIOs are trying to think about how to reduce their tech debt, and then also how to create policies to govern some of the things that their employees are really excited about doing. So those are the two things that we hear CIOs talking about the most right now.
CIOs are certainly busy, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
Greg, do you have any thoughts on this?
I think it's my biggest challenge is trying to be a business enabler while at the same time addressing cybersecurity in a digital age, right? So we hear about it almost daily in the news that breaches are now just a regular occurrence, right? And these are happening from small mom and pop shops all the way to large mature organizations. the adversaries are getting more advanced, right? The threats now are commodity as a service, right? So it's very easy for inexperienced people to get in on the cheap, right? And there's things that are just evolving in the tech space. The weaponizing of AI with things like Worm GPT are now going to be directed at us. And skyrocketing costs of cyber insurance and the carve outs makes us question, like, is that really going to be something that we can use going forward? I think it's going to eventually go extinct. So how do I maintain that raising the bar every year while not consuming all of the dollars for innovation and enabling the business, right? To me is a challenge.
Sure. Anyone else like to answer this question?
I'll just add. Oh, go ahead, Binu.
Go ahead, David.
Yeah. So I would just add on to their two comments is the business folks want to move forward. They want to use the new technologies. How can we do that in a secure way? How can we help and as Greg said, enable them to be successful with that, and then not create something that we have to deal with in a more draconian manner months down the road. It is a very much of a balancing act of those different priorities.
It's funny that you say balancing act, but I use the phrase all the time. I don't want to be the business prevention department. So how can I give you the tools for you to be effective in a secure manner without preventing you from doing your job, right?
Binu, we cut you off earlier.
Well, I think Greg, David, Maria, they made amazing points, and I agree, right? Like the top challenge is certainly how to continue enabling the business without succumbing to cyber threats, right? But also the other side of it is technology is constantly evolving, right? And there is a lot of buzz on all kinds of AI technologies, most recent one being generative AI, right? Like ChatGPT has captured popular imagination. And so every company, every boardroom, every CEO, business partners, there's always questions around how do we go leverage a technology like that, right? And so the CIO and CIO teams also have the unenviable job of separating hype from reality, right? And quickly figuring out what are the right guardrails, what's the right kind of governance, and what part of the technology is truly usable and useful without any of the side effects like AI hallucination or your proprietary data becoming a part of the training base of the models.
And it does feel, I was going to say, it does feel different this time around, right? Because I mean, every year there is something that is new, but the way this has captured the imagination and also the ability, the facility of, frontline users, right? Mm-hmm. End users, to be able to go out and do things that are interesting, that can really change the way they work, and can be so problematic for an organization, right? You could just be leaking your information all over the place if you're not careful. This is a brand new atmosphere for sure.
And so I could tell you a little bit about my experience there, because some of these things are happening to us. We don't have a choice. So about 6 months ago, you read the news and Samsung accidentally leaked some of their intellectual property to one of these engines, right? And then they shut it down, and then Apple shut it down. And then I talked to my peers, and we shut 20 of the top providers down at my company, and instantaneously the phone started to ring. Hey, I was using it to write code. Hey, I was using it to reinterpret ESG data. Hey, I was using it for XYZ. So then it became, oh, now I'm the business prevention department where I don't want to be. So what we did is we schooled up very quickly. I have a cross-functional team of business people from across the enterprise. And we did some Gartner calls, we did some vendor calls, we had some integrators that were aligned with our company, and we just said, we're jumping in. We're going to hire an integrator. They're going to help us stand up the policy, the process, the governance. We're going to do a pilot for 50 people on an internal version of GPT-4. We're going to buy some licenses for Copilot, for Office 365, for Dynamics, and for GitHub. And 90 days from now, we're going to be smarter as a company and figure out how to deploy Florida in 2024.
I was wondering how long it would take us to go into a generative AI conversation, and sure enough, it came up pretty quickly. But I think that in itself is a challenge because there's so many different models and they're changing at such a rate. We had the Word2Vec, which was a precursor 10 years ago that was in existence for about 5 years. We had BERT models that lasted 3 years, and now models are changing every other week, it seems, of which one's best or which one can have the new capability. And so
I
with all
think
these
it's a toolbox though,
technology-
right? I mean, I don't see, I fast forward 6 months from now and I see us having 3, 4, 5 maybe different models depending upon the use case, right? It's not going to be one model fits all, right? When I talk about taking the, you know, the thousands of sensor data points off our equipment and bringing it into a model or an engine to do predictive maintenance, to do auto alignment and chamber matching, that's not going to be the model that the software development team's using, right?
maybe, but they're all changing in lockstep and together. And so given that, where do you see it all going? I mean, what are some of the effective and innovative ways you've seen the IT leaders apply these different technologies, and how can they use it to improve business outcomes? David, would you like to take this one?
Sure. So I think some of the most impactful experiences I've seen is where we're automating low value or tedious tasks. So you have a specialist in the lab who needs to look at a variety of photographs and such. We can automate that using AI to do image analysis to highlight the particular points on the particular photos that you want that individual to work. So you've changed their day from photo after photo, which is not only tedious, it's probably very highly error prone, and automated that to where we can focus that individual's attention on the photographs that they should spend the most time on. So I've spent quite a bit of different use cases on online quality control, and then also just the statistical model analysis of performance of particular instruments or equipment. I know, Greg, you talked about some things around preventive maintenance and other areas, and you know, maybe you want to jump in on that. But I think, again, a lot of it is being smarter and getting the folks out of the tedious, low value tasks.
Yeah, so I mean, the preventative maintenance one is going to be a game changer for us, you know, whether it's, you know, taking temperature or acoustic or pressure readings off the machines. And, you know, instead of saying, if you see this, it's going to fail, a model can start to build that into a data cloud and start to look at anomalies in the cloud, which would then be able for us to have planned maintenance instead of unplanned downtime. And our tools run 24/7 at the manufacturing sites of the major chip makers in the world. Like when a tool goes down, there's many millions of dollars at risk. The other thing that we can use it to do, like you were talking about in the quality control, is there may be a microscopic error in one of these wafers, and we may produce thousands of wafers not knowing it until days later when it goes to through analysis, right? We're looking to use the tools to head that off at the pass, which is going to lead to higher yields and throughput in manufacturing, right? And some more probably practical applications that are probably useful for many of the people on this call. If you take a look at the statistics with Copilot for GitHub or Code Whispers, the AWS product, they can bring software development times down to nearly in half. And you know, that's going to be time to market, but it's also going to be job satisfaction, like you were talking about. You know, my software engineers like to be in what they call their happy space. They like to be solving complex algorithms and problems in the bowels of the code, right? They don't like to do the, you know, minutia, repetitive things and error handling and all that type of stuff. So if I can automate that with one of these tools and keep them in their happy space, I'm going to have a better employee.
You know, I think it's, oh, sorry, Binu, please.
Oh, no, it's all right. Thanks, Mario. So I think data science and machine learning are always high leverage, impactful ways of going and solving business problems. But also just in terms of approach, right? Like I feel there are so many other kinds of problems in an enterprise that may not have a data science or machine learning intervention applicable to them, right? Like, so in my experience, one of the best ways to use technology innovation or apply technology innovation to enabling business outcomes is looking at design thinking techniques like journey mapping, right? Journey mapping, put simply, is just looking at how a user persona interacts with a process or a system and then capturing all the experience dips that the user experiences throughout the process or with different interactions with the system, right? And then using that information on experience dips or challenges or pain points to decide what process and technology interventions are needed to address the experience gaps. That 100% of the times helps you go impact the business outcome, because whatever technology interventions you aligned it from a user-centric perspective, and the users are incented, aligned, and directed towards moving the needle on that business outcome. So just more of a process perspective. That's one of the ways I like looking at things personally.
Yeah, a lot of different ideas. How about the post-COVID in terms of the virtual workspaces or augmented reality or virtual reality? Are those taking off in your respective areas?
I would
Yeah,
say
Peter,
they took off, and in my use case, they're starting to expand. So I think we were blessed that COVID allowed us to roll out some of these technologies in weeks, which would have taken many months in a pre-COVID world. And then once the tools, the Teams and Zooms and whatnot were out there, then we were faced with how do we serve as a customer in Singapore if we can't put a field service agent on a plane? And that's when we said, oh, we get this thing called HoloLens, and we can ship that to the customer and have smart hands at the site, and we can direct them back from the mothership with an engineer that can't get on a plane. And now fast forward 2 or 3 years, now that we have experience with this in our environment, we're saying, well, wait, this could be a value-added service. We could sell the HoloLens with the tool and have expert or premium support available, right? Or we can sell you training that your employees could make use of through the HoloLens portal. So there's other opportunities once we planted the seeds.
Yep.
Yeah, I think
Specifically going back to the COVID question, right? Like at that point, I was working in a different industry. I was in manufacturing. Couple of interesting, not really AR, VR use cases, but the basic challenges that we were facing as a company, as were many other manufacturers, was the supply chain disruptions, right? And so everything being serially late from the suppliers. Likewise, since we were a manufacturing company, our clients were also nervous about how are we doing from a supply perspective? How quickly will they get their products? So a couple of interesting analytics interventions we put together were one for our customers, right? And it was a system that brought together data from our CRM system, our ERP system, as well as from our logistics service provider to give our customers, and we were a B2B company, right? So giving our B2B customers an Amazon-like experience to track where their orders are, right? Like, are they at the factory? Are they at the distribution center? Are they now loaded onto a truck? If they're loaded onto a truck, what exactly is getting shipped and when should they expect it? Right? Extremely powerful, reduced a lot of calls to our exec leadership team, and reinstated much needed confidence in our customer base in doing business with us.
Great
So,
use case.
not directly tied to COVID at all, but VR and AR we have seen the creation of new markets and new products. So wildly new markets that layer on top of traditional physical markets at this point. So, if you're going to a basketball game and you want to be able to see a ticket, now can you have sort of a meta experience of the players? Can you have a meta experience of the products that go along with that? We're seeing even out to industries like insurance and banking, we are creating sort of mirror markets for all of these things as well, because you're living in the metaverse. Now, granted, it didn't go exactly the way we talked in our pre-call. We were talking about, a year ago today, I thought the world was going to look pretty different with the metaverse, and we're in a different spot. But so much of that has happened now. We are able to create, again, these new products that we never could have experienced before, because we have the ability to do that 3D modeling, to create that stuff in that extra space now. And that's terrifically exciting. And I think it's not driven by COVID, but it's going to go somewhere new.
Yeah, I think AR and VR has been very successful on the manufacturing floor with maintenance. So the ability to present written instructions, diagrams to the operator, while they're performing a task, use visual aids. So like highlighting a wire, a bolt that you want them to perform a task on, has really lowered the error rate, leading to higher quality at a lower cost. And I just see more and more of that occurring. And onboarding, you see today, post-COVID, the employee transitions, people moving from job to job, so that your initial training, getting people up to a skill level, these technologies help immensely.
Right, lots of use cases. We've already talked about this a little bit, but AI seems to be taking off in most places, to say the least. But where do you see the most effective use cases for AI in the enterprise? And what are your biggest challenges and concerns with these things?
I think we've talked about some of the biggest concerns, which is security, protecting your intellectual property. You can use these tools to automate many routine tasks like sales proposals, code development that we've talked about in this call. But if you don't set up a structure like Greg described, you're exposing all that information to your competitors or anyone that wants it. So I think the security is certainly one of the largest concerns, but the benefits far outweigh the costs, and we'll be seeing more offerings trending towards what Greg described. And maybe where you don't have to build it yourself, you can go somewhere where I can provide you a secure location to partake of this.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I had a few other things that come top of mind. So security, definitely. We need to make sure that the community is trained, right? So they know how to use it, about prompt engineering, a good prompt, you get a better answer, lower likelihood of hallucinations. They need to be aware that hallucinations take place, right? And check for them. The question of transparency, if you're going to create a company work product, do you need to put a footnote on it that says that it was generated using GAI? And then fact checking. We've all read the legal law case that was submitted, and it was phony. So if you ever want to run a good exercise, ask it to write the bio of yourself and your CEO. And I get about a 50% hit rate. Where one comes back and it's plausible, and one comes back and it's completely off the wall. So.
Mm-hmm.
So as both consumers and creators of Gen AI products, I think actually, Peter, you were touching on some of the things that we think about a lot, and those would be those different models. And I'd love to hear you respond to it, but just first, the training model, where is it? Where are you sourcing that material from? Making sure you have an ethical foundation, that you have rights to the materials that are coming. Then again, to your point, Greg, about the authenticity, the ownership, the credentialing of the content you've created, making sure you have an ethical framework in which you're operating across the board. And then you've got to be thinking about future regulation. What is the regulatory environment going to look like in 6 months, in 18 months? What's going to come back? What does your ownership look like? Again, back to that modeling. And then finally, indemnification, because enterprises, when you were creating that content, what are your rights to it? But Peter, I'd love to hear what you were thinking about those models too.
I guess I'm thinking from a different space mostly. One of our main concerns is the fairness and ethnicity of all the scientific information. And so it's great that we can make the models, but can we assert that the models are correct, which is something different than a lot of the generative AI. That's important, but we always have a human in the loop for those kinds of things before we submit them for external work or FDA and so on. But if we come up with a treatment or a prediction model, is it fair across all genders, ethnicities, and so on? Can we prove it? Can we assert why it's true? Can we understand what's behind it is critical for us in the scientific and pharma space. So those are my main concerns. Binu, what are your thoughts?
I would say, one use case, AI use case that I've seen a lot in a lot of companies at this point, and that's also a very powerful use case, is unstructured documents processing, right? And using computer vision and natural language processing capabilities, right? Extremely powerful when it comes to AP or accounts payable automation, right? So being able to extract critical data points from unstructured contracts, being able to extract critical data points from invoices, being able to match invoices to contracts, being able to drive automated two-way, three-way matches of invoices to purchase orders and receipts, and then automate the payment if everything matches. Extremely powerful use case that also saves a ton of dollars, allows businesses to capture more discounts from their vendors, keeps payments timely, keeps working capital low, etc., etc. Right? So
it's so funny you say that, because in all of my previous life, I think I spent the last 15 years trying to tell all the people I worked with, storage is cheap. Just keep all your stuff. You don't know what to do with it yet. Just keep it. You'll be able to do something with it. And then for most of that period, we'd say, if you want to be able to parse your content, is your friend, right? Got above about % of the content stored being structured. It was always 80% to do it. And you're right, now is the time that you can go parse it. But again, to Peter's point, how do you know you've got the right stuff out? Are you identifying risk when you're looking at contracts? Are you identifying, across the whole border? What do you still do need to be able to do those checks? But the idea that suddenly this vast quantity, I used to work for a storage company, and we'd ring a bell every time we had 1 billion pieces of content in a repository. People have so much content, and most of it was inaccessible until now. Yes.
Yep. And then really those unstructured documents are what a lot of companies call dark data, right? Like they're not easily accessible. Once you put them in a repository, people forget it. But the value of it is unlimited.
All right. Yeah, a lot of great applications there. We, of course, have lots of literature mining and trying to understand the scientific thought at any school at any point in time so we can make the best treatments available. So lots of challenges in different spaces. I do want to ask the audience that it's an opportunity to take your questions. And in fact, we do have one that just came in. We hear about a lot about AI these days. Is there a single other technology that you think will be of equal importance this year?
For us, I would say growing our capabilities in additive manufacturing, which is through the industrial grade version of 3D printing. It's allowing us to do some really innovative things, both in the prototyping front and in the finished product. There's subcomponents that can be made that were not previously possible in traditional milling and manufacturing.
To me, that's a sector or industry specific question as well, right? Like depending on what industry you are in, there is, for example, I'm in retail plus wholesale. As a company, we also own a fleet of trucks for all of our distribution operations, right? And we are in the middle of a large supply chain transformation currently, right? And so for us, optimizing different parts of our supply chain is just as important, and not everything is AI related, but there is, as an example, there's this massive transportation management solution that we're implementing that's also about visibility to our inbound TMS fleet, our outbound TMS fleet, to critical aspects like driver pay, to route optimization, etc. Some aspects of it are still AI enabled, for example, route optimization, but a lot of it is just basic visibility to things that people used to write down on paper or in other ways earlier, right? So,
yeah, I think in our field we have something similar. It's AI adjacent, which are the wearable sensors. The ability to collect more information from any source and be able to eventually use it in an analytics framework is changing the way we do clinical trials and many other things, because instead of going into a clinic and having a blood drawn, well, you could do it remotely. And COVID helped make that possible, but also the ability to capture wearable data on a Fitbit kind of device or something else that tracks your steps, how you're walking, can have a massive change from the go into a clinic, run a test for an hour and see how the medicine works. You're collecting data 24/7 perhaps. And so that's a massive change, but again, it's industry specific.
Yeah, I would add on the supply chain challenges were highlighted in COVID, and now the ability related to what you were talking about, Peter, of being able to process mass amounts of data. So looking at what are my key suppliers, what are the key materials, where am I at risk, How could I mitigate those risks? And the whole idea of the Internet of Things and like you described with wearables, streaming data from multiple sources, being able to process it in near real time and then take action on it, is it will only continue to grow.
And
I
I
think
think-
we're still applying lessons learned from all of that. I mean, between the SolarWinds hack, right, that infected its customers, and what happened to us in the supply chain in COVID, our customers are putting more mandates on us to assure that we're not a point of failure in their supply chain. We're doing the same to our vendors. We're looking at our manufacturing footprint and saying that we need to be able to operate in 2 theaters in case there's something like this again. And then the amount of evidence that we need to produce for our customers. I mean, they want to know about our cyber insurance policies, our incident response plans, our immutable backups and disaster recovery. What level of maturity are you within ISO or NIST? And that bar just keeps moving. Right? So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you.
No, I was going to say it's intelligent automation. So I think so frequently we do get excited talking about AI, and then many places where we're actually saying AI, we don't really mean AI quite yet. What we mean is intelligent automation, and that is being able to extract insights, data, and then eventually insights to actionable insights from the processes that we have digitized, from the next thing we're going to do, so that we can improve our customer journey going forward, so that we can repurpose the content that we already have access to, so we can deliver better experiences to our customers and to our employees as well, because we know that customer expectations and employee expectations have just gone through the roof in the last 3 years. So yes.
I want to give a quick shout out to cloud as well, right? Like I'm sure a lot of us have already moved all of our data and applications to the cloud or are in the process of doing it. So cloud certainly is another technology that has profound implications on how we work and how we operate.
Certainly. All right, so just a question for what's on your radar. Like, how have you seen companies use innovative approaches to data analytics for better business insights, observability, and outcomes? You want to start with that one?
Sure. So the way I like to think about analytics is that I always like to start with the business outcomes, then work back to what decisions influence those outcomes, then work back to what insights inform those decisions, then work back to what data is needed to power those insights. Right? Like, so if you can think about analytics from that frame of reference and build your project or program or your roadmap around that, whatever analytics you end up building will always have business impact. It will always allow moving the needle on a business outcome, right? And so just following that principle, there's so many different kinds of analytics my teams have built in the past. One of the more impactful ones that I would like to briefly touch upon was related to price optimization. And this was also through the peak of COVID, with supply chain issues, with prices going up from the supply side. What do we do with our pricing, right? And inflationary environment in general was a challenge, right? And so one of the tools we created for our sales team was a tool that allows them to understand the trade-offs between price, volume, revenue, and profitability, right? So we had product lines where the challenge was probably we had excess stock or it was going to be obsolete in some time. There, the objective was moving the volumes, right? And so the tool allowed them to price it accordingly. There were other product lines where we had limited production capacity and everything was sold for a year, even before the year started. So there it was more of an opportunity to optimize our revenue and margins, if you will.
Great, thank you. Greg, do you have any ideas on this one?
I think he covered all the major points there.
Great. Anyone else?
So something that we think about a lot is personalization at scale. And whether that's delivering content to individuals or to organizations and things like that. Again, we talk about the expectations of our end users. People want to receive content that is personalized to them in the channel that they expect as well. So if we're dealing with a bunch of, Gen Z people, you're not going to send them an email. You're not going to send them a PDF or a piece of, physical mail. Everything has to be personalized to you. So we have analytics that are feeding those journeys as well. But then we're also being able to gather the analytics as well. How people are interacting with your content. Even if I want to go and look at, sort of my car insurance or materials like that, do I want to be presented with my whole policy? Do I want to be presented with useful portions of it? Am I going to go and look at it as a print document? Do I just need to be able to get answers from it? So we are using machine learning, certainly, but just the analytics generally of the content that we provide to people, how they touch it, and then the sentiment of the consumers of that content. And that's something that we spend a lot of time thinking about.
Peter, if I could jump back in, I did think of something that we're doing here. So I always think of when you say analytics, my brain shifts to the warehouse, but it's not just the warehouse; it's the unstructured data, right? So if I have a field service organization and they're doing case management in their CRM tool, and they're building knowledge base articles, and then they have manuals and other significant documents over in another repository, maybe Teams, and then they have 10 years of email out there with a lot of dialogue back and forth. How do we be able to solve problems faster? Because we've solved the problem at the same customer in Ireland that we're facing 6 months ago as we're facing today in Singapore. And to be able to take a natural language search tool and have it canvas that whole footprint of unstructured data and come back with, what are the 10 things I could check when the laser's down, right? And then that's the problem that we're wrestling with today, that I'm really hopeful that these AI tools are going to be able to solve for us. Right? I call it search and correlation.
Yeah, and being able to query that in natural language, so people to ask questions. So to her example, instead of me giving you a PDF, you asked a question about what specifically are you looking for, and it just provides that portion versus the whole document, which then you have to search through. So.
Yeah, I'd like to touch back on one of Maria's points that you made earlier about personalization. And this question's for anyone, but in personalization, there's an issue and a balance and trade-off with privacy. And so one of our audience members wants to know about, what are your thoughts on the privacy issues related to AI specifically?
I think that is a critical issue and also a hard problem to solve. But that is where increasingly a lot of data that companies are collecting, especially personal data, they also get customers to opt in on how they will use that data. Right? Like an interesting example that comes to mind is from my last company that was an HVAC manufacturer, and every HVAC manufacturer now has IoT enabled units, right? And so when you get a new unit and when you register the unit, one of the things you're doing is you're explicitly checking a box that says it's okay for your data to go to their cloud. And in return, of course, you get certain services that make things convenient for you. For example, that is the data that powers the app on your mobile phone that allows you to set, first of all, understand how's your system operating. It allows you to get suggestions on how should you set your system for more optimal comfort, etc., etc. So really, it's a give and take. Customers who enjoy the convenience that comes out of the personalization often don't mind it. And candidly, I feel we are a little past the point where it mattered, right? Like all of our data is out there either with Facebook or Instagram or one of the many other social media platforms that we are all on.
So I think this is where ethical frameworks and then policies really do matter, and you've got to think about it. So again, returning to when we think about what our models look like, whether we're going to be using our own internal models or they're going to be public models, we have to be really thoughtful about who we are interacting with and how we're interacting with them when we are engaging in using AI. So whether that's for generative AI or whether that's for repurposing content that you really have access to. And then I think we really have to keep an eye for what the regulatory framework coming our way is. Ultimately, law will be set by our law creators, but with in organizations. I mean, I know I have to go and check our policies for, what to do and what we're not allowed to do. But I think it does behoove us to, doesn't mean that we should use all of it all the time.
Yeah, in my field, everything's completely regulated already, and so HIPAA privacy means I see there's no private data whatsoever. Everything's blinded, double blinded, and I have no access to it. So it's a harsh layer, I guess, different layer.
I think in general, regulation is headed towards giving customers a choice, right? Like, and as a company, so it's on you to build a framework and mechanism to capture that choice and honor that choice, right? Like if they do not want personalization, there should be a way for you to switch it off. And if they're okay with it, if they've opted in for it, then we are all good there.
All right. Moving on, I'm curious what you think the next technology trend is going to be that have your eye on. This is a quick round, short answer. If you have any ideas, what are your ideas for what you're looking at in that space?
My vote is for generative AI. And really, it's not just one sector. I think multiple sectors, be it IT, be it the creative field, be it legal, be it education. Once we learn how to leverage large language models appropriately without all the side effects, or to at least handle the side effects well, it's just a matter of time before. And I think Greg was alluding to this earlier, right? Like custom code generation piece is going to be automated, and then we'll have a human in the loop to quality control it before we deploy it. Likewise, all creative content, first pass of it is going to be always through a large language model like technology, and then there'll be a human in the loop to quality control it, right? Legal, same thing, poring over volumes and volumes of case law, looking at precedents, being able to summarize that quickly. Education, creating content, different formats that are easy to consume. So yeah, generative AI is my vote.
David's nodding. I was thinking along similar lines. I was thinking that if I can combine the ChatGPT kinds of generative AI, which currently predicts the next word, and that's great. But what I really want is some full AI that actually does inferencing for me, not just the next word. If I could combine those two worlds, boy, that'd be super powerful. All right. There's a couple of questions that have come in. I think we only have time for one of them. So what's your best place or resource you use to keep up with the latest and greatest in AI news? Do you have any secret sources you'd like to share?
I don't have a secret source. I think I use a couple different ones. I've bumped into some vendors that play in this space, and I learn a lot just from meeting with them. The usual Gartner calls, both on the advisory services, and they have a professional services arm. Learned a lot from them. And big players like our account reps from Amazon and Microsoft as well, right? So, but I think where I mentioned before is now it's time to jump off the PowerPoint and get in and get your feet wet. That's what I think we're going to learn most, right? So I'm looking to broaden this pilot out this year to 50 people in the organization. That's across the different departments. They need to be willing to take the training class. They need to be willing to abide by the policy that they publish. So they need to be willing to come back every quarter and give us new ideas for the next business case or the next evolution of this stuff. And then I'm really looking forward to then grow that out to 500 people that are in the club starting next year. I would not recommend rolling it all out to the entire organization, big bang. It's just too many unknowns, and then you can't get your arms around it.
Any other ideas?
I think those were all absolutely fantastic ideas. A lot of the same sources that I use. But I want to say, looking at startups is one of the best ways to understand which way technology is headed, right? Like not all of them might be ready for prime time yet, but a lot of startups dabble in ideas that are a little out there, right? And are a good source of information on that.
And of course,
Yeah, I would add on that through venture capitalist forums that you can get introduced, forums like this event where you get to meet vendors. Greg's point about talking to the vendors and what or how are they approaching this problem differently is a great education.
So yes, our customers, I love trolling around on investor and capitalist and venture capitalist forums as well, because they are people who are willing to just throw caution to the wind in a way that we're not yet, right? So they're going to get there, get burnt or not before we are. And that's really fascinating stuff.
And of course, conferences are another nice place for these kinds of things. But with that, we have to wrap it up. I'm going to turn it back over to Nick.
Well, thank you guys for such an amazing panel discussion. And I want to thank everyone else for joining us today. This session, along with all of today's content, will be available on demand following the event.